This video is about the indicative pasts in the following Romance languages: French, Spanish, Italian, Catalan, Portuguese, Galician, and Romanian. This is going to be the order of the languages throughout the video. So okay, the indicative pasts. I put pasts in plural because we're going to be talking about basically the English, the simple past and the present perfect in English. So the simple past being I ate, and the present perfect I have eaten. So the uses of these differ, and not every language has the same conjugations, nor have they got the same uses. So to show a similarity with the conjugations and the uses of verb tense in the Romance languages, we're going to start with the imperfect indicative. So here we have the imperfect. As you can see, he used to be my friend. In all of these languages, this is what you would use. They're all the imperfect, and they're all used the same way. So it's very straightforward. And in these languages, they're spelled the same way, and it's the same exact word. The pronunciation is a bit different, but basically it's the same word. The equivalent of certain past tenses might not always correspond to English and can vary amongst the languages. For example, when an action has just been completed, many languages do not use a past tense at all, while others do. In English, we use the present perfect plus just. So we would have to have, plus just, and the past participle. So he has just left. In French, Spanish, Catalan, Galician, they use a construction with this helper verb, this auxiliary type of verb, in the present tense, plugged into the infinitive. Well, the infinitive comes after it, after de. These languages, they use the past tense. In Portuguese, they use the past tense, but with a formula identical to the ones above. In Italian and Romanian, they use their compound past tenses, and they use a word like in English we use just to differentiate when something has just happened and when something happened a while ago. So in Italian they use appena, and in Romanian tocmai, and this is just basically like just. Okay. Even though some tenses would be more grammatically precise, especially because they exist, they are not used today, being replaced entirely by another past tense to convey the same meaning. As we can see here, there is a nuance between I went to the market and I have been to the market. In this example, we see two tenses in French. The first would be more appropriate for the idea, but today it is not used at all in modern French. The second example is used today to convey the same idea as the first, and in modern French there is no longer a difference in nuance. So if I say l'année dernière j'allais and l'année dernière je suis allé, they mean the same thing today. The Spanish equivalent for this French sentence requires the use of the preterite. So you would have to say el año pasado fui. You would have to say last year I went, because you've mentioned the year. As here we're mentioning the year as well, but we'll go into that further. I will go over these constructions to help give you a jump start if you're learning more than one Romance language, or if you're just curious to see how they relate to one another. Here are the names of the conjugations on the left hand side. These conjugations are made by conjugating the verb to have in the present indicative followed by the past participle of the verb you want to be in the past. In English, this construction is similar to the present perfect, to have plus the past participle, but the idea conveyed is not the same in every language, such as French. I have slept is I'm telling you something and I'm not being specific about when I did it, I'm just telling you in the past I've done it. In French, as it's used today, this can mean both I slept and I have slept. So we're going to go over the compound past and the simple past. In French, the compound past, I have slept, j'ai dormi, and the simple past, j'ai dormi. Both exist, but the simple past is no longer used today in modern speech and is replaced by the compound past, the passé composé, to convey the meaning of both. This is true for spoken French. If you're writing something very formal, perhaps you would write the simple past, but it would be something that happened a very long time ago, and the writing would be very, very precise. If you're learning French, when you speak, you're going to have to learn everything about French and all the grammar, but you're not going to use this every day. I've never used it in writing, but perhaps one day you might use it. You might hear it spoken if you're watching a play that takes place that happened a long time ago, and they want to give a touch of emphasis on the fact that it's old, or if the play was written a long time ago, perhaps it was written when they used it in writing and whatnot. But today, you would just use the compound past for the past and in general. Okay, in Spanish, the compound past, he dormido, and the simple past, dormí. Both are used, but some regions may use a simple past where compound past constructions should be used. So, for example, in Galicia, they use the simple past and instead of the compound past in every instance, whereas in another region like Catalonia, they would use the compound past and the simple past. In other countries, this might work differently. If you come from a country that you use one or the other, you can put a comment below and you can let us know how you use it in your country. Okay, Italian. The compound past is predominantly used and replaces the simple past. In certain formal writing, the simple past is used when something happens a very long time ago as a historical past. In sub-regional speech, the simple past is used. So, for example, in Naples, you can hear the simple past, and in other regions as well. But the standard today, it's usually you use the compound past to replace the simple past as well. Some speakers might use the simple past, but this would be seen as a regionalism. In standard speech, it would be the compound past. If you're writing about something that happened a long time ago, you probably would use this in more formal writing. But in general, the standard today is the compound past. In Catalan, there is a different way to express the simple past that is used by everyone today in all types of speech and writing. So there's two ways of saying the same exact thing. They use the present indicative of the verb anar followed by the infinitive of the verb. Anar is not conjugated the same as when the verb is used to simply mean to go. So for example, anar, to go, is on the left-hand side, and ana in the past construction is on the right-hand side. These in parentheses, they are variants, they mean exactly the same thing. You can use either or interchangeably without any problem, without changing the meaning at all. So the compound past, I have slept, is je he dormit. The simple past is both je vaig dormir and je dormi. Je dormi and je vaig dormir mean the same exact thing, but the first is no longer considered standard in speech. The simple past can be heard and can even be heard interchangeably with the passat perifrastic in some regions of Valencia. The construction of the passat perifrastic can be considered as what is used today to be the standard, but the preterit perfect simple is by no means incorrect. Both the compound and simple past are used without any exceptions that other Romance languages may have. Don't confuse this tense with the use of the word to go to be off to, with the intention of, with the goal of moving to, etc. This can be spotted by the use of a between ana and the main verb. Also, the conjugations of ana are different. So, jo vaig menjar would mean I ate, and vaig a menjar would mean I'm off to go eat. This construction does not have the same meaning as its Spanish, Galician, French, Portuguese, etc. counterparts. So here, I'm going to go eat, I'm going to eat, etc. In these languages, it's a future construction that you would do for something that's sure and it's going to happen soon, but that's for another video. In Italian, vado a mangiare would be the same construction as Catalan, and this is how you should see this if you study Italian or if you know Italian. It's the same as Italian, it's not the same as these languages. In some languages, the verb to have is different when you are saying to have in one's possession. The Latin-derived habere is only used in the past tenses in these languages, and they now use the equivalent of the verb to hold. This is true for the Iberian languages and some dialects of other Romance languages, such as Neapolitan. So in Spanish, in Catalan, Portuguese, and Galician, you use this. In essence, both of these mean to have. It just so happens that they don't use both in the same way. Keep this in mind for the Iberian languages. Galician. There are no compound tenses in Galician that are equivalent to the meaning of this compound past. Just a simple past, and this replaces the meaning of the compound past, just as the passé composé replaces the meaning of the simple past in French. In Portuguese, the use of the verb haver as an auxiliary verb for the compound past has changed throughout its history. 1. The construction of to have in the indicative plus the past participle using haber is not used today. It has been replaced completely by the simple past. This tense can be found in very old literature. The verb haber as an auxiliary can be found in other tenses, such as havia falado, for example. But today, tinha falado would be the most common we had. Ter has replaced haber as the auxiliary verb almost if not completely in people's speech in the other tenses. A compound construction exists, but it is not a tense like the present perfect tense. The construction with the verb ter, to have, plus the past participle is used in Galician as well as in Portuguese, but has a different meaning than that of the French avoir in the past participle or the Spanish haber and the past participle, which also uses the verb to have. Let's take an English and Spanish example. I have already eaten. Ya he comido. Ya comí, ya comín. The simple past is the equivalent to the compound past in the aforementioned languages. The construction of ter and the past participle is used to express something that has been happening recently, has been happening, has been, etc. So, for example, in Portuguese, nestes dias tenho lido muito sobre a guerra. Nestes dias tenho lido muito sobre a guerra. These past few days, I've been reading a lot about the war. And not, I have read a lot about the war. Another example, últimamente tenho pensado en ti. Últimamente tenho pensado en ti. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Tener in Spanish exists as an auxiliary verb, but it is not used the same way. It is used to add the effect of something that has been carried out repeatedly. In Galician and Portuguese, it means more of what has been going on recently. So, for example, in Spanish, tengo muy vista esta película. I've seen this film quite a bit. As opposed to, he visto esta película. I've seen this film. This should be only used with transitive verbs and should agree with gender and number of the direct object. Tengo muy vista esta película. Since película, the film, is feminine, so does this past participle. If we don't use these forms, we get a different nuance. Li sobre a guerra, li sobre a guerra, he leído sobre la guerra. I read about the war. I read an article about the war. I know of its existence. With the verb haber, Spanish does not make any agreement in gender, so he leído sobre la guerra. The verb ter is used in both Galician and Portuguese and other compound senses, such as tinha falado. Falará is the standard. In Portuguese, tinha falado. Falará exists, but it's not used that frequently, if ever. Some Portuguese speakers use haver as an auxiliary, sometimes in some regions. Romanian. Eu am dormit, eu dormi. Although both tenses exist in the language, the use of the simple past is similar to that of Italian in that it is used as a past historic or regionally, but its use in regular speech is not considered standard. The compound past replaces the meaning of the simple past as it does in French and generally in Italian. In French and Italian, with certain verbs of state intransitive, the verb to be is used instead of to have as an auxiliary. So, for example, I have gone, I went. In both French and in Italian, they use the verb to be and not the verb to have. The past participle turns into an adjective, so it must agree in both gender and number, since you're saying is and not have. So if you are in the singular, if you're talking about one person, or if you are one person, you would not put an S here, you would be in the singular. If it's in the plural, you would add an S, and it would be in the plural. If you're talking about men, it would be in masculine, and women in the feminine. If you are a group of men and women, you would use the plural forms of the masculine. And the same rules apply to Italian. So, io sono andato would mean that I am a man talking, and io sono andata would mean I'm a woman talking. Loro sono andati can mean both. They went, they have gone, I'm talking about men, or I'm talking about a group of men and women. ese, ser is used in some dialects of Catalan. Its use varies but is not considered standard. So, jo soc anat instead of jo he anat. So to wrap things up, in modern uses, these are the tenses you would have to learn in these languages. It's always good to know everything about a language that you're learning, but when you learn the languages to speak in everyday speech, these are the tenses you are going to have to know. You would go on adapting the way you speak according to the people that you're surrounded by and where you pick up your tenses. So perhaps you're in a region that in Spanish they predominantly use dormir instead of he dormido, so you might not use this one that much, but that just comes with time, basically. But for the rest of it, it's basically, these are the standards. So, okay, I just made some charts here so you can see the past tense. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions or comments. Please let me know how you use these past tenses in your region and the way you speak, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.